Welcome to the Creative Commons RX podcast. Before diving into this episode, I want to ensure we're all on the same page. This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.
Cyanide, you hear that word and right away you probably think of spy thrillers, secret agent capsules, that kind of thing. But the real story of this notorious poison is, well, a lot more complex, and it's actually way more common than most of us think. So let's peel back the layers on this silent killer. Yup, you guessed it, it's cyanide. And really, understanding how it works, where you find it, and how we fight back, it's like a masterclass in emergency medicine, where every single second counts. And if you want to understand just how high the stakes are, you have to look at heartbreaking tragedies like the Kiss nightclub fire. In that disaster, it wasn't just the fire itself that was so deadly, it was this invisible gas, cyanide, that was released from the burning soundproofing foam. It's a terrifying real-world example of how present this danger can be.
All right, so that brings us right to our first big point. We need to understand cyanide poisoning for what it is, a sudden, silent, and incredibly dangerous emergency. You know, for doctors, cyanide is a really tough opponent. It strikes hard and it strikes fast. The problem is the symptoms, things like headaches, confusion, or just collapsing, could be a million other things. And what that means is, by the time you're absolutely sure it's cyanide, it might already be too late. The key takeaway here is that life-saving treatment has to start based on suspicion alone, way before any test can confirm it. Okay, so if it's this dangerous and this fast, where does it even come from? I think the answer is going to surprise you.
For a minute, just forget everything you've seen in the spy movies. The single biggest source of cyanide exposure, believe it or not, is smoke inhalation from regular fires. When things like plastics, synthetics, or even natural fibers like wool and silk burn, they can release hydrogen cyanide gas. After that comes industrial exposure, then natural sources, and only then, way at the bottom, do we see intentional poisoning. And when you dig in, the sources are just all over the place. We see it in industries you might not expect, like making jewelry or in mining. And it's also found in nature, inside the pits of apricots and cherries. It can even, very rarely, be a side effect from some long-term medications. It really is a poison that can pop up where you least expect it. So how can one tiny molecule cause so much chaos? To figure that out, we've got to zoom way in, right down to the microscopic level, to see how cyanide pulls off this incredible cellular heist. Okay, it all comes down to this terrifying state called cellular hypoxia. Here's an analogy. Imagine your body's cells are like little engines, and oxygen is the gasoline. Your bloodstream, that's the fuel line, is delivering plenty of gas. But cyanide comes along and pulls out all the spark plugs. The engine gets flooded with fuel it can't use, and it just dies. That's exactly what cyanide does. Your cells literally suffocate, even when they're surrounded by oxygen. So here's the play-by-play of the heist. First, cyanide doesn't even knock. It just slips right into our cells. It makes a beeline straight for the mitochondria. You remember those, the power plants of the cell? Once it's there, it finds this absolutely critical enzyme called cytochrome oxidase and just shuts it down. Game over. That one move completely stops the production of ATP, the energy that powers every single thing our bodies do. No ATP, no life. It's that fast and that devastating. So, think about this. The symptoms are vague. The poison works incredibly fast. How in the world does a doctor even begin to diagnose it? Well, this is where medicine becomes a kind of high-stakes detective work. We've all seen this in movies, right? The detective walks into the room, takes one sniff, and says, "Cyanide, I smell bitter almonds." It's a classic. But is there any truth to it? Well, the short answer is not really. First off, only certain cyanide compounds even have that smell. But even more important is this. About 1/5 of the entire population is genetically unable to smell it at all. So the bottom line is, relying on your nose is a gamble you just can't take.
So what do doctors do? They have to throw out those unreliable clues from fiction, like the almond smell or a specific cherry red skin color that honestly often isn't even there. Instead, they have to focus on the context. Who is this person? Where do they come from? A firefighter pulled from a building? A lab tech who collapsed at their bench? These real-world clues are infinitely more valuable than any smell. And here's the real kicker. The blood tests that can prove it's cyanide, they exist, sure, but they are just too slow. The results simply won't get back from the lab in time to make that initial life or death decision on how to treat the patient. You have to act before you know for sure. And that leads us right into our final section, which is all about racing the clock. When you even suspect this invisible killer is at play, what do? The whole game plan comes down to two things: clinical suspicion and immediate action. It's something called empirical therapy. It basically means you treat based on your strongest, most educated guess, because waiting for 100% proof could be a death sentence. So doctors will flood the patient's system with pure oxygen and, at the same time, give specific antidotes like hydroxycobalamin, which can actually go in and neutralize the poison. And that really leaves us with this final thought. In our modern age of incredible high-tech medicine, cyanide poisoning reminds us that sometimes the most powerful tool a doctor has isn't a machine or a lab test. It's their suspicion, their intuition, their hunch, and the courage to act on it. It's a powerful reminder of the human element that's still right at the very heart of medicine.
This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.